morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us across the world. This is the African Digital Economy Summit podcast, AfriDes podcast. Today, we'll be having conversation with Armand NGUETI, the founder and CEO of UBTS. The AfriDes podcast is our gateway into the African digital economy landscape. And today, we'll be looking at a very, very interesting topic on digital infrastructure and the landscape and future trajectory. Welcome, Armand NGUETI. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's a great pleasure to connect and also a privilege to be here. And thanks for what you do for the digital ecosystem in Africa. I really appreciate whatever you guys are doing. I'm proud. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Armand, I would like to take you on how would you describe the current state of the digital infrastructure landscape in Africa? And then what progress do you think Africa has made so far?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to start first, by highlighting, how very strategic from multiple standpoint, from a geopolitical standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from a social and social political standpoint. It's very, very important to understand that right now Africa is at the crossroad. And I can say the learning is over. Africa is at the stage where the learning is over. Africa needs to wake up. That's what I can say from an entry level. And many years ago, back in the 70s, the 80s, and then the 90s, internet came, the digitalization came, and Africa has always been around, to witness what is happening. And I think still today, we're still into that learning curve. And for me personally, I think Africa is on the crossroad right now because the learning needs to, at a certain point, translate into, manufacturing, into producing, into learning, and into adaptive design thinking, design products based on the specific local needs. And then also, link the digital economy to traditional economy, and then provide tremendous value to the actual stakeholders throughout the 54 countries of Africa. So I can say in one word, learning, but in a way to translate into orchestrating, because we are just leaving the learning curve, and we are the crossroad between the learning and the orchestration. Also, from a pure technology standpoint, we still have a couple of issues with the digital literacy, especially in the rural area. The rural area is not what it should be, in Africa right now. The urban city centers, telecom companies are doing pretty much, a good job as they can. I say as they can because, sometimes telcos, are very, very dependent on the local laws and regulation in each of these countries. And also a lot of impact of the business, the doing business, the doing business beliefs and landscape in each of these countries has a direct impact on the activity of the largest telco, because they're the one, by design, in charge of driving, the digital infrastructure to the next level. I say by design because they're the one with the highest capability. They're the one with direct connection to investors, funding initiatives, and they're the one with the presence on the ground for mostly 30 years for some and 20 years for some. I think these type of companies are trying whatever they can based on the local condition they have. I think they can do more, and I think they're on the way to learn more from the expectation with the competitive products coming on the way. And yes, we have these new satellite, and we have some new kind of technologies coming to the game. And I think these type of new technologies will accelerate the transition from the learning all the way to the orchestration. And I think personally, I see um, a big shift that will happen between just being a buyer, buying all these technologies and, orchestrating the way to design them locally in Africa. I see something coming that way. And that's pretty much what I can say at a very high level from personally, my personal point of view, and how I see things based on my personal experience. Thank you. You're on mute. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I know you did highlight about linking both the urban and traditional, or emerging and traditional areas. At the podcast, we are very particular about rural Africa. So, what do you think are the key differences in digital infrastructure between the urban areas and rural areas?
This is a very fundamental question. Thanks for that, Kelvin. I think the first thing to understand is to maybe we should first of all start with breaking down the digital inclusion in multiple parts. Digital inclusions, the first of all is the literacy, the education. So you have, you have schools, you have IT schools in main urban centers. You have IT schools. You have sometime in high school you have computer labs. But when you go to rural areas, there's unequipped. So first of all is the literacy, the education sector is not what it should be in the rural area, in the sense of trying to get it parallel with what is happening in large urban areas and the rural areas. So you have disparities, right? You have a lot of lack of infrastructure, especially from a literacy standpoint. The education sector infrastructure is most of the time broken. There's no fund, there's no sustainable way of funding the infrastructure in the rural area. In the urban area, in the private investors do the job. If the government is not able to do that, you have some private investors launching some private schools with, cutting edge infrastructures. But unfortunately, because of the business design, they cannot go in the rural area, make such investments. Maybe it can be an issue with return on investment, the ROI. And I think the literacy is the first issue. The second issue is the coverage. So when you look at the map of the coverage of telcos, telecom companies throughout Africa, you see clearly the gap between the large urban areas and the rural areas. You see the gap. And large telcos, they've got a strategy, the big corporations, they got a lot of, they're very, very highly regulated, and they do move, generally that makes sense. That makes sense to them. And some of them try to launch some programs, but there's still a lot to do, because when you look at the report from the UN, United Nations Broadband Sustainable Commission, when you look at the report highlights the lack of infrastructure, especially the coverage in the rural area. I think there's still a long way to go to extend the coverage. When you look at the 3G, for example, some countries are still looking to cover, maybe up to 60% of the rural area by 3G. When we talk about 4G, it's mainly concentrated in main cities. And, when you start going deep inside, there's a lack of 4G LTE connectivity. Now 5G is coming, for a few selected countries. For example, where I am here in Cameroon, 5G is not there. 4G LTE is there, but there's still a long way to go. I think I think also the convergence, the rural area lack the convergence. The convergence is when you drive multiple way of accessing the connectivity. For example, the traditional mobile telecom connectivity, also the fixed way of getting connected, which is the Wi-Fi, using a Wi-Fi. So the convergence of both methods Sometimes you can see it in main cities, but in rural area, it's very difficult to see that. And when you look at the property of all these different means of getting connected by mobile, by fixed, you see a lack of some kind of usage, some kind of adoptions, usage, adoptions, and maybe use case. Because, for example, if you want to go to the gaming, with, for example, when you look at the Minecraft game, Minecraft is a kind of game that stimulates the brain for young kids, for example. To play such a game online with the community, you need maybe in internet with a very good latency. And sometimes when multiple people can gather in the rural area, sometimes they need a fixed way of getting connected, but unfortunately there is a lack of fixed infrastructure in the rural area. Also, the satellite. When I leave the traditional mobile, the fixed Wi-Fi, and also the satellite is pretty much expensive. Kelvin, when you look at the price of the satellite subscriptions right now to just to access the gear, it's a consistent cost when you look at the GDP per capita in some of these African countries, and you look at the price to just acquire the gear, to be able to receive the satellite signal. So there's a big gap. So the third dimension is the cost. Even when the connectivity is there, sometimes it's pretty much expensive. And and the locals in rural areas cannot access the service because of the price. And then at the end of the day, you also have we cannot underestimate the country politics and framework. Sometimes the government is the one to incentivize and maybe subsidize these programs targeting the rural area. So sometimes the local strategies and laws are broken in a sense of bridging the gap between main cities and rural areas. So the dimension, the public politics and laws and frameworks are also a dimension not to underestimate. So I think that's pretty much the different dimension we can rate that particular question.
Okay, awesome. Yes, just a follow up on rural connectivity. With connectivity still being an issue in rural areas, what effective methods or solutions will you suggest, to addressing the digital connectivity, particularly in the rural areas?
Yes, that's a very good question again. I think first of all, it should all start with legislation. First of all, the government should understand why it's critical for the rural area to access the internet in the same way the large urban areas do. And I think when the government understands, second thing is it goes by, the new frameworks. The first one I suggest is the access to the equipment. When you look at, because the main driver to pull up the infrastructure out is the equipment, right? People need equipment to pull up and bring the signal. When you talk about the coverage, all these things, it's all about equipment. When you look at the customs, for example, the custom costs are high. When you want to get all these networking equipment in, sometimes the custom is pretty high. Second thing, the main labor, the government should incentivize all these companies hiring people to extend networks, for example. I think they can be exempt of some taxes, they can be funded by the government, they can be, and that will incite more companies to get into the game and then assist the telcos, because the telcos cannot do everything alone. I see more partnerships. We need more partnerships between suppliers and implementers, the local deployment partners, also with largest telcos with large access to funds and capital. They need to work alongside with the locals having their own companies. It's a kind of win-win B2B type of relationship. but this need support from the local governments. They need support. They need to find ways to accelerate the machine. Third thing, I think we need to find a way, maybe not to manufacture 100% all these equipment locally, but at least, to bring the parts together and to assemble these devices locally. Because first, when you look at Kelvin, go on YouTube, type how to build an access point in a Chinese factory. You see the video, right? You see young kids, taking parts, pulling parts together. They like thousands of them working for, I don't know, whoever, Huawei, I don't know, whoever. What are they doing Africans cannot do? That's a simple question. I don't understand. So we need to bring these assembly lines local here. That will bring the cost down. You can just bring the chip, the motherboard, right? When you open a base station, you see the motherboard, and then 80% of the stuff are the plastic, that plastic, forms, and it consists of 70% of the device. So I propose we assemble all these devices in Africa. That will drive more jobs, and then will drive with the government politics and frameworks, blah blah. It will drive more implementers, more companies will be eager to deploy, more equipment will be available at a cheaper price, and then more coverage will just follow next. Because if you have equipment, you have people to deploy, you will cover, right? And then you will cover these different areas. And then covering is not enough. Internet, when you cover, you switch on the base station and the access points. What next? You need the content. So first, the fundamental content driver is internet. So internet now, again, the government, because in most of these countries out here in Africa, the government has a stronghold on the internet, wholesale, management, resell, or sometimes, strong access. The government controls the wholesale thing. So we also need to deliberize, to leave the wholesale market free, so that it is being dictated by the law of the market, that will drive the cost down, because government try to control everything is bad for business, especially in the wholesale thing. The wholesale internet is bad when the government controls the wholesale internet. But the government can find a way, I don't know, maybe getting on board as shareholder of these companies, maybe being in the board, to control whatever they do, maybe. But the government should find a way to get the wholesale market open and free. That will drive investment. More private companies will drive investment into the internet backbone, and then it will drive the cost down to the end users. And I think on top of that, we need to invest to teach, to train people on how to create the content, because internet is just a vehicle, right? But ultimately, you can build local services, and you use what we call the internet exchange points to distribute the content. So you need more content creators locally to design systems, to design applications that can run on the local infrastructure, that you can implement a kind of local internet like China does, like India does. So that's pretty much, the kind of recommendation, not to be exhaustive, I can, formulate to really drive us to a point where we can address these issues.
Yeah, thank you, Armand. Yeah, again, you touched on government. So what role do you think government and policymakers have played in the past to shape the digital infrastructure on the continent, And then what advice will you give to government on the continent, as regards advancing digital infrastructure on the continent?
Yes, I think back in the days, they played a critical role to get us to where we are today, adopting all these new technologies, especially connectivity technologies. They learned, maybe slowly, but they learned from it. They were the first to drive the first, private companies to come across and build these networks. The government was instrumental to design the framework, for regulating all these businesses, because when you look at the early thousands, 2000s, there were a lot of abuse from these private companies, especially involved in the whole ecosystem, the whole digital ecosystem, because of the lack of standards and stuff. The government was really instrumental to bring these standards up to speed. The government was also instrumental on the providing a way to attract people to invest on infrastructure, because when you look at the internet penetration rate, it exploded all the way from when the internet came up to the mobile connectivity, and then that explosion was also had also the government in between, driving laws, subsidizing frameworks, and sometimes investment in public companies, especially in the countries where the government owned the public wholesale company, like in Cameroon. Camtel is being owned by the government. Camtel is a state-owned wholesale company. The government has injected a lot of money. I think in some other countries the same, like in Ethiopia. Ethiopia just opened their market like a couple of years ago to the competition, to some private companies from overseas. But they used to be the government, like the single company, telco company was used to be the government. So the government was really instrumental. And I think, unfortunately, the technology goes fast, right? The government cannot follow the pace the pace at which the technology is moving, and the government is facing is some limitation, you know pursuing the technology, how it's moving fast. Today we talk about neural networks, we talk about open Wi-Fi, open RAN, we talk about AFC, automatic frequency, coordinated type of Wi-Fi infrastructure, where the AI can manage some stage. Things are moving fast, Kelvin. And then I think right now we should reinvent the way to really address the regulation issue, and also aligning the pace as what the technology is moving with the politics. I think that's pretty much where the challenge is nowadays, because sometimes the technology is moving all the time, not just sometimes. The technology is moving too fast, and the regulators are most of the time behind. Most of the time they're behind, and I think today the government should spend more time with the private sector, spend more time with innovators, host the people at the forefront of the innovation in these electronic communication technologies, understand these technologies, being in the process of designing new business model with the stakeholders to understand exactly how to protect the customers, because at the end of the day, the role of the government and policymakers is to protect all of us, and to protect us is to understand where the business happen, and then understand where to put safeguards to prevent you know uh, those with malicious intent, to drive the market down and, spoil the users. I think the government nowadays, the advice I can provide is to be more like a startup government, not just like, people go into office and, they should be more like a kind of startup government, understand the technology, host events with the stakeholders, being where the innovations happen, and then understand host workshops on new business model with these cutting edge technologies, understand how the new trends will affect the way people communicate, the way people learn, the way people buy things online, and then give early stage authorization to startups to operate, and then learn from what they do, and then build the framework with them. Because sometimes, the regulators, the policymaker want to shut down. They don't want to understand, they just want to shut down. And I think going deep in the relationship with the people at the forefront of the innovation can be key. Also investment, no one get more money than the government, Kelvin. The government should pour more money, because it tax people money. If you can tax people money and we invest in the locals with good projects that can generate value, get some, get to a point where they can hire new people. They can, use the brain to design new products, to push it out. And the government should, like in Cameroon, we have the import substitution policy, to avoid importing and to export. So that's the new key framework of Cameroon policy right now. So to get there, we need to, provide, policies and tools and money and subventions to subsidies to all these, local actors so that they can be in a position to produce goods they can export. I think that's pretty much where we are today. Innovation is moving fast. The future of digital communications, it's AI, it's disaggregated networks. Today we talk about disaggregated networks with open RAN and open Wi-Fi technologies. And we talk about DePIN, decentralized public infrastructure, where you see anyone can build a network. Can you imagine, Kelvin, a society when anyone can build his own network using a blockchain, for example? And DePINs are actually taking, taking some momentum across developing countries like Brazil. You have some use case over there, especially also in Asia. And with DePINs, people can build their own networks and monetize it, providing network to their neighbor and stuff like that, and tokenizing the whole thing. So I think that's the future of where we are going. I see more blockchain involved in the connectivity. I see more tokenization in the space of the electronic communications, and that will, challenge the stronghold of the government on everything. These new technologies will challenge the stronghold of the government in the full control they have and they want to have, and they should be ready for that. So that's pretty much what I can share.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know you did mention about emerging technology, decentralization, tokenization, and the likes, so I want to be very particular on the role, or how can Africa leverage technologies like AI, blockchain, Internet of Things to drive connectivity and digital infrastructure on the continent?
Yes, I think using the three laws, the first is the Metcalfe laws, the laws of the network effects. As more people join the network, as more the network is valuable. I think that's the first fundamental law. And, blockchain, for example, is by how blockchain works, for example, combined with AI, can provide a better way to incentivize people participating in a network by far by the actual ways people are getting incentivized or people are generating the value in actual traditional networks. So the Metcalfe law is a pretty good way. These technologies will impact the future landscape. We have the bandwidth law. The bandwidth law states that every 2 years, the power, the bandwidth will, extend by factor of at least a double, proportionally by the power of the new processors. And because all these access points, all these network equipments are small computers, they use a motherboard with the processor, right? So every 2 years, the processor is expected to be more powerful. You see what is happening today with NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA is the most valued company in the world right now. It's because of these processors, right? These GPUs. So these GPUs are drivers of technology adoptions and transformations in the digital landscape. So the bandwidth, it's proportional of the power of the processing. So as more the power of the processing increase, the bandwidth will increase. So I see more bandwidth in the future because these processors will keep growing in power, right? So the bandwidth also will grow in power. I see more bandwidth, and I think that bandwidth will provide a framework where people can do more. You know, with the larger bandwidth, you can do more. You can do computer vision. You can do online medical operations. You know, you can do a lot of great stuff. You can do gaming online. You can do a lot of great stuff that requires the real time and the low latency. So also I see the Moore law, which is the law in relation with the processor power, directly linked to the bandwidth law. I think these three laws are the ones to orchestrate all these technologies. AI, especially applied AI, will have a huge impact. But I think not now for applied AI because it requires, you know, some specialized hardware. But the Gen AI side, it's already there. You know, everybody got Meta AI on his phone on WhatsApp right now. So educations, you know, traditional life, you know, personal life are being impacted already by Gen AI, and Gen AI will, you know, redefine maybe ways to use electronic communications, but but we need to find ways to train models locally. You know, I'm not an advocate of models being trained by you know by outside ecosystems than where people are. You know, I see more focus in the future or coming years on building and training the models in Africa, where, you know, you can train a use case to learn how you go to, you know, produce whatever crops you know, in the village, and then you can, you know, you can learn from that journey, you know, and give you insights. And I think it will be challenging, but at the end of the day, it's these are open protocols. You know, with the right GPUs, the right hardware, we have skills in Africa, you know, to be able to start training these models here. And you know, Gen AI side can be very interesting, but in one condition, we need to find a way to train local models, to train models in the way we think, in the way we work, in the way we do more with our fellows on a daily basis. So the applied AI side, you know, it's you know, requires, you know, some specific gear, some specific hardwares, you know, to integrate the applied AI to and run applications like IoT, you know, sensors and Industry 4.0. And I think that side, you know, we requires, you know, maybe some specialized policies. I see some frameworks in place already. I see in Nigeria, the new guy in the NASEINC, the research office, the new guy is doing some pretty much great jobs, you know, trying to get Industry 4.0 to come. I see some other stuff in some other country, but it's pretty slow. Personally, I'm an expert in Industry 4.0, but the speed I used to see in Hong Kong, for example, it's, you know, they move much faster than what is the case here. I think Industry 4.0, it's an aspect, you know, that we should not be neglect. You know, it's a very, very important, you know, dimension that can enable us to produce more because it affects directly the industry, the way we produce. And I think the future of Africa should not be thinking without Industry 4.0, especially at the industrialization side at scale, not just for few projects, but at scale. And yeah, that's pretty much the barriers. And I think, but for now, we pretty much consumer of most of these technologies, but you know, we have an edge that can help us to make a switch, but we need a baseline infrastructure for that. And I think the public policies, the local investors, you know, we need a new generation of local investors. You know, all these investors involved right now in the continent I think they're not the right ones on the long term. They're not the right ones. We should develop a new thinking on how to invest in a business in Africa. It's not just, I know they invest their money, no problem, but at the end of the day, if you want to build something, all together, we need to find a way to define the framework to which we should invest in businesses. These are the kind of businesses that can help us to be self-sufficient, to orchestrate locally, to drive the fundamental value locally, to build patents, to build and deposit patents locally, and then to design finished goods that we can export out of Africa. I think we should have a framework, because I was at the event, IMF event a couple of months ago, International Monetary Fund events out here in Central Africa. I heard a lot of discussion about investing in businesses in Africa, in Central Africa, in West Africa. But I was asking myself, under which framework, who defined the framework to which these investments should move? I think that's a very, very important question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you are just joining us, this is AfriDes podcast, your gateway into Africa's digital economy landscape. We've been having conversations with Armand NGUETI on the future of digital infrastructure in Africa, its current landscape, and of course, future trajectory. Armand, UBTS recently secured a very strategic partnership with MTN subsidiary in the Republic of Cameroon. I would like you to just throw more light on that partnership, and what does the partnership hold for both the Republic of Cameroon and then, of course, Africa?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I think we've been discussing, collaborating, and doing some great stuff with the MTN team. Shout out to all the MTN crew at MTN Cameroon. They're very good guys. I spent some good time, orchestrating common values and principle with them. I think this is exactly what I'm talking at. The South-South, type of relationships and partnerships. I think MTN is a very, very respectful company. It has been in the continent for the telecom early days. And they went through a lot of different, that company got multiple lives. And now, the new CEO is trying his best to put the company in the map, especially driving the company to a kind of service type of, service type of telecom company. And he's trying to drive the ecosystem mindset and also drive the platform mindset as well. And I think these type of values are 100% aligned with what you do at UBTS. And UBTS has been developing with 25 global partners a unique way to industrialize the open Wi-Fi protocol throughout Africa. And we've been doing this for the last 5 years with the best of the best in the world. And today it's a very good partnership with MTN. Linking both our capabilities to address the local market needs, not just in a traditional way of just getting service, pushing it to the market, but in the sense of running adaptive design thinking with the locals, understand the needs, co-design the product with the end customers, and then deliver tailored solutions to businesses and also end users. So that's pretty much where we are today. The market potential is crazy. Cameroon, I think it will just be the first step. And we also have a floor to architect digital solutions and propose time to time to the local team and also to the other markets. I think there's an opening to the other markets of MTN in Africa in the deal. And fundamentally, this partnership will transform the 30 million people in Cameroon because, as I say, there is a huge gap between the traditional mobile connectivity and the fixed Wi-Fi connectivity type. and we just joined forces with MTN to address the issue of fixed broadband connectivity using Wi-Fi, not just Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi combined with the AI, machine learning, and all these cutting edge technologies like open roaming and all these protocols. And UBTS is proud to to bring our expertise in on the field, and work in partnership with a major player like MTN to go ahead and achieve the goals.
Awesome, awesome. So what does the future look like for UBTS?
Yeah, oh man, that's a pretty good question. I think the first thing in my mind right now is to, because this partnership unlock the next milestone for me. The next milestone is to find out a way to produce the Wi-Fi next gen access point locally in Cameroon. So not just maybe in Cameroon, maybe in Nigeria, anywhere in Africa, that where we can use the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement to move these goods out throughout Africa. So it's not just in Cameroon, but any country that will have the best in subsidies and incentivize will be ready to go there. So I'm working with some owner patent partners, patent owners and partners to find a way we can set up some local factory, test factory in Africa, so that we can design and architect and build local access points. And then from Africa, we ship them across the continent to avoid, making large orders from China, India, all these things. So that's pretty much something I will be working next on. I need to find a way to produce these equipments locally, especially exactly like people do with cars, right? I see a lot of car concessions in the throughout Nigeria. I see Peugeot, I see Mercedes, I see some cars, bringing the assembly line in Africa. I want to do the same thing with the access point, the Wi-Fi next gen access points. I need Wi-Fi next gen access point to be in every homes. That's the next for UBTS. These equipment should be in every homes, and interconnected, providing value education. Kids can learn from the tablets. They can connect to online games produced by local. We have some great education app designers throughout Africa. I want to push them to each of these home Wi-Fi's using locally designed and built access points. And then, next step is to go deep on the research and development to find out ways to introduce more technologies for the B2B side, especially the very small businesses and the medium-sized business. There's a lot of opportunity, bringing new tech to these type of businesses, especially in the mobility sector, the healthcare, the trade, the global trade, and also the housing. There are some couple of use cases we can bring that can make housing affordable. And I think that's pretty much where we'll be working on. But first of all, my main concern right now is to raise, to extend all these networks across the rural area and also the urban area, because there's a gap of the fixed connectivity using Wi-Fi in urban area. Let me count you a story, Kelvin. I was in Lagos recently. Okay, I spent 2 weeks at Victoria Island. I never seen a smart public hotspot in any of these public places in Victoria Island in Lagos in 2024. So there's no sustainable existing fixed broadband Wi-Fi infrastructure in Lagos. That's a huge opportunity. And I'll be back soon. I will hit you up when I'll be back. I'm planning my trip right now to be back and find out ways to fix that issue. But personally, I experienced that issue with the expertise I have. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So even urban areas need work. The mobile connectivity is one thing, but the convergence with cutting edge fixed broadband infrastructure using next gen Wi-Fi, it's another thing. And that is most suitable for fixed areas like restaurants. I spent, can you imagine, Kelvin? I spent 4 days in an Airbnb, very, very expensive apartment. But the experience I had to change. I had to change that location to go somewhere else. And I think even inside urban areas, they still have large gaps to be filled, and that's pretty much the next step for UBTS. I'm thinking extension right now in multiple countries. Nigeria maybe will be next, Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, and some of these geographies. So that's pretty much where we are today.
Okay, as we draw close to the end of today's podcast, I would like to highlight the fact that, of course, Africa has been designed to be a consumer, you know, to be a consumer country, particularly within the digital space. So with the advent of Starlink driving connectivity or finding its pathways into most of the African country, do you think is a threat for local innovators like yourself, or is actually an advantage?
Yeah, I think when you read the Sun Tzu war strategy, it's a famous strategy book from a Chinese author. When you look at that book, you can never refuse any innovation coming to you. Take it first, accept it with no condition. Take it with you. Get the gear, okay? Open it, break it down, learn. So myself, I don't see any challenge with Starlink. I see a way to learn. Every country in Africa should authorize Starlink. Every of them. I recommend every country to accept Starlink and to learn. You know, if you don't do that, you will never be China. You will never be India. What was China 40 years ago? Can you tell me who was China 40 years ago? Nothing. Look at China today. They opened the country to all these innovation. Look at where China is. Who is the first in AI worldwide? China. Where is the US? Where is, US, my country? Where are they? Nowhere. So learn first. To learn, you need to give. You need to accept. You need to be humble. How can you not be humble enough to accept Starlink to operate in your country? That's a lack of humility. It's a cutting edge product though. From an engineering standpoint, Starlink is crazy. Hats off to Elon Musk. Crazy technology. Trust me, it changes people's life. Go to the rural area, with one dish, someone connect 40 for 400 people, bring education, get people to see to see engineering online on YouTube. And then you see a young kid in the village saying that myself, I should be one, working on this thing one day with no internet. How is going to see that? It's a revolution. Every country should accept it, break it down, and learn. So that's my personal point of
Amazing,
view. You should
amazing.
never be like against any innovation someone brings to you. Starlink could be saying like, I stop myself in the US, I don't export my technology. I know many patent owners in America. They never export their technology out of America. Many of them are in America. The product never leaves America. There's plenty of them. Elon Musk brings it to you. Look at China today. China just launched the competitor of Starlink. Why are they not launching before? Because they had no technology. They bought the Elon Musk gear, they open it, they learn, and then they're launching theirs. So, it's a bullshit, to not allow Starlink to operate in a country in Africa. That's bullshit. You should open it. You should let it work. Understand why people love it. That's the most important one. Why people love it? You need to understand that. Why people love that technology? Is it? And then you design a framework to bring what we call in strategy the quantum value leap, 10 times fold the value of a competition product. When you understand what a product is bringing to people, you design something that will bring 10 times more value, and then you get to the quantum value leap. So that's where African countries should be today.
Amazing, amazing. So as we close, what will be your closing thoughts around the future of digital infrastructure in Africa? What will be your call for both collaboration and partnership? Bringing together relevant stakeholders, like as you've earlier mentioned. What's your closing thought?
Yeah, my closing thought is more collaboration, more learning, more humility. We need to be humble. Like, you see something which is great, accept, take it, use it, learn, and then do whatever you have to do. I see the diaspora has a big role to play. You guys out there, never forget about where you come from. Bring we have a diaspora with a lot of skills. We have diaspora working in NASA, working everywhere. It's time for them to give back to the mama Africa. These folks will be very useful for this continent, and we need to find framework to work in conjunction with them. All the brains should be on the table. I see an opportunity for a next generation of young billionaires in Africa, because sometimes Africans are afraid to talk about the money, to talk about billionaires, blah, blah. But you need to think about that to get there. So we need a young generation of rich people who understand the challenges, who understands, the geopolitics, who understand the key challenges of, getting people with skills locally, with good salaries. Nowadays in Africa, you see a lot of people leaving Africa to Canada. Canada is taking the brains, because they give them good job, blah, blah, but they leave in Africa to go and produce, pay taxes overseas and these things. So we need to have people, young entrepreneurs who really care about Africa to have money, to have money to reinvest in whatever idea they have in Africa, and then drive, employment, drive high level salaries locally to prevent the talents to move out. And then, I see an Africa where global collaboration on a win-win basis, or at least sometimes win-win is not always there, because it's difficult to win with people with 30 years of advance, and to get coming to them, you will not be always winning, but always learning and being always eager to reinvest in your own community, especially to invest in R&G. I see an Africa that should invest heavily on R&G. We will be nothing without R&G. Without R&G, Africa will get nowhere. you know Only technology drives value. If we're not innovators, if we're not driving new patents, with new technology, new frameworks, we'll be nothing, only be consumers. So we need to find a way to drive more money. I think we should tax, maybe, all the extra money to corporation, blah blah blah, and make sure that that particular money is reinvested in R&G, and that R&G can maybe keep the talents local, because people are looking for good way of living. And I know my people outside of Africa working overseas, they would like to stay in Africa if they had that standard of living they want for their family, but they leave because they got no choice. So we need to put ecosystem in place so that we can guarantee a standard of living which is acceptable for the talents not to escape. Because I'm writing my PhD right now on the turnover, the unprepared turnover in businesses. And what I'm learning right now is a red light, man. It's a red light. People are leaving Africa at the pace we never seen before, especially talents, and that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad, especially for the tech sector. That's pretty bad. And that's pretty much what I would like to say. But overall, I'm pretty much optimistic. That's why I'm still around and doing my hustle and moving around, and I'm very optimistic. I think thing will be fine, and we should just join forces together. And also my last word today, my last word is Africa makes sense being one. 54 countries is worthless. It's bullshit. 54 countries bullshit. We can never go anywhere with micro countries. These micro countries are, are meant to go nowhere. So if Africa is not finding the way to work as one, we ain't going nowhere. So that's my last word for today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you, Armand NGUETI.